When we talk about video games, FIFA, Mortal Kombat, and so on. Among these names, Mortal Kombat is especially popular as a fighting video game, but there are far more violent video games, such as Agony, Manhunt, Bloodstorm, etc. While hardcore action-adventure game fans might know all about them, some of these names are quite underrated, and today, we will explore the top 12 violent video games that are far worse than Mortal Kombat. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Manhunt 2, 2007. To kick off this list, we have Manhunt 2, a stealth game developed by Rockstar Games in 2007. This game is portable with PlayStation 2 and Microsoft Windows, and it follows Daniel Lamb, a mental patient with amnesia who has been trying to figure out his true identity. Lamb is also accompanied by Leo Casper, a sociopathic assassin who ends up being a terrible influence on most occasions. The two of them manage to escape the Dixmoor Asylum together and are even chased by bounty hunters and members of the project, while Lamb tries to discover his identity and realizes the true dangers of associating with Leo Casper. The game takes place in a third-person perspective, and the gameplay follows a stealth execution mechanism where players must corner enemies and kill them without detection. The levels of execution become more graphic and gory with each level, wherein level 1 executions are described as hasty, while levels 2 and 3 are described as violent and gruesome, respectively. The game starts with the players hiding in the shadows and has undergone several changes compared to the first part. Some more features in Manhunt 2 include audio access, the ability to climb and crawl to explore new areas, and even use firearms for gunfights. The game received mixed reviews from critics, but was greatly praised for its improved gameplay and a much darker storyline. In fact, it was so violent that it was banned in countries such as Germany and Malaysia, and Rockstar had to censor many executions, blur graphic fights, and get rid of the reward system that gave points based on the brutality of the killings. Chiller, 1986. Released in 1986, Chiller was a light gun arcade game by Exidy, and it consisted of 4 levels, including the torture chamber, the rack room, the haunted house hallway, and the graveyard. The players assume the role of an unseen torturer who is tasked with maiming, mutilating, and murdering a bunch of non-player characters across the 4 levels. While some of the NPCs fight back, the game poses another challenge as the players must kill their victims as soon as possible. In the first 2 levels, the NPCs are restrained by medieval torture devices, while players figure out the quickest way to kill them by activating the torture machines. As the game progresses, the challenge becomes far more traditional, and players must shoot at paranormal entities ranging from zombies and ghosts to even mummies. The game caught the players' attention due to themes of violence and torture, and it was initially even criticized for promoting the killings of seemingly innocent people, as opposed to traditional video games where the player has to fight enemies who defend themselves. Manhunt, 2003. While we have already explored Manhunt 2, Manhunt was the first part of the series developed and published by Rockstar Games in 2003. It was a stealth game released for PlayStation 2 and eventually released for Xbox and Microsoft as well, and it took place in the fictional Carcer City. While Manhunt 2 followed a specific prisoner who breaks free, Manhunt consisted of 20 levels or scenes where players had to dispatch enemy gang members and stealthily kill them. Just like Manhunt 2, the game was played from a third-person perspective and designed so that players were rewarded based on how well they sneaked up on their victims. They were also given stars based on the brutality of the executions, and it was very important to approach their victims undetected. Players had a range of weapons, including baseball bats, crowbars, plastic bags, and so on, and they could also unlock firearms in later levels. This game was set in a shared universe with the Grand Theft Auto series and took place in Carcer City, which was infamously known for being filled with corrupt crime rings and violent gangs who are determined to find and kill the player. Most of the plot revolves around James Earl Cash, a death row inmate who is brought under the control of the director, who promises him freedom in exchange for killing several gang members across Carcer City.
Today's the first day of the end of your lives.
Postal 2, 2003. Developed by Running with Scissors, Postal 2 was a first-person shooter video game played from a first-person perspective. It was known for its aggressive plot lines, stereotyping, and dark comedy, and even though it received mixed reviews at first, it soon gained a cult following. Postal 2 was set in the fictional Arizona town of Paradise, where the postal dude is tasked with numerous mundane chores throughout an in-game week. As the player navigates his way through the game's map to complete these tasks, he must take it upon himself to decide how passively or aggressively he wishes to react to different situations. Some of these instances involve being provoked by others, being given the finger, being mugged or attacked, and even harassed by a convenience store terrorist. The game becomes more and more intense with each task, and the character is reminded to complete the tasks without killing other characters. In fact, the game's tagline was to remember that it is only as violent as you are, and players had to make tough calls while dealing with cannibalistic workers, fanatic terrorists, a SWAT team, and an eccentric religious cult, among others. Fans were especially drawn to Postal 2 because of its violent gameplay and numerous controversies, and it was even followed by 2 sequels. Bloodstorm, 1994. Released in 1994, Bloodstorm was an arcade fighting game developed by Incredible Technologies. It is considered as one of those games that might surpass rival Midway games, Mortal Kombat, and there is no doubt that it matches Mortal Kombat's aggression and action-based storylines. The game is set in a post-apocalyptic future where war and famine are quite prevalent, and the world has been divided into 8 provinces. As the game starts out, the High Emperor who rules these provinces has been assassinated, bringing the world to the brink of a global war. In order to restore peace and order, the ruling kings and queens agree that they must conduct the Bloodstorm tournament in order to choose their next High Emperor according to the ancient laws. This arcade game is a weapons-based fighting game where players need to use specific techniques to kill their opponents, and players had to kill 8 opponents, 7 secret characters known as the Agents of Necron, and a final boss in order to emerge victorious. When it was first released, Bloodstorm was notably known as some of the top, most popular arcade games, but it could not fare well due to some tough competition from Mortal Kombat. In fact, some critics described it as a parody of the game, but even then, it remains to be a fierce, violence-filled arcade game that is most definitely worth a try. Harvester 1996. Written and directed by Gilbert P. Austin, Harvester was a 1996 point-and-click adventure game developed by DigiFX Interactive. As the name suggests, the game takes place in a fictional Texas town called Harvest, where players take on the role of a teenager named Steve Mason. As Mason wakes up in 1953 with amnesia, he finds himself being manipulated into performing a series of dangerous tasks with violent consequences and has no option but to follow the orders of a cult-like community known as the Order of the Harvest Moon. As the game progresses, Steve wonders how he ever landed in such a situation, but continues to obey the cult and follow their orders when they promise to help him learn how he landed in Harvest. The game was known for its violent content, and players could either progress through the game by solving puzzles or killing NPCs while maintaining enough health to make it out alive. As Steve Mason makes it through his missions, we learn that Harvest is an elaborate virtual reality simulator created to determine if regular humans can turn into serial killers, and he is the only real human besides Stephanie Potsdam. As they eventually rely on one another and make it out alive, the game ends with an ultimate choice where Steve either needs to murder Stephanie as his first step as a serial killer or refuse to do so, which would result in the scientists declaring them both brain dead. As far as video games go, Harvester stirred up quite a controversy due to its gory themes and was even banned in Germany. Splatterhouse, 1988. Releasing in 1988, Splatterhouse was a beat-em-up arcade game developed by Namco, and it was such a huge hit that it inspired several sequels, remakes, and parodies. The plot revolved around two students named Rick Taylor and Jennifer Willis as they seek refuge from a thunderstorm at a local landmark known as Splatterhouse. The place is rumored to be the laboratory of a renowned parapsychologist named Dr. West, who conducted several terrifying experiments before disappearing off the face of the Earth. As the game begins, Rick finds himself regaining consciousness in a dungeon under the mansion where he has been resurrected with the help of a Mayan artifact, while Jennifer is transformed into a fanged monster who tries to kill him. The plot gets increasingly eerie with each level, and players play the role of Rick as he tries his best to save Jennifer and cross several levels before finally facing the final boss. The game's marketing techniques heavily emphasized its violent nature, and it even came with a faux parental advisory printed on the box stating that the game's themes might be inappropriate for young children and cowards. While this was a fun marketing gimmick, the game in itself was genuinely filled with horrifying graphic scenes and violent choices, and is definitely worth a try. Agony, 2018. Introduced as a dark fantasy survival horror game, Agony was developed by Madmind Studio in 2018 and could be played in a first-person perspective. Players found themselves in the depths of hell without any memories of their past lives, and were essentially tormented souls with the ability to control people and possess weaker demons. In this way, players had the ability to control the martyrs condemned to hell and try to use them to escape and return to the living world. The gameplay involved mechanics such as crouching and holding one's breath to avoid higher demons, and collect hidden statues and paintings to boost their status. Players also had to solve puzzles to unlock new areas and follow the instructions of the Red Goddess to reach the lowest depths of hell and face the beast. However, the plot is not as straightforward as it seems, and players have to prepare for unexpected betrayals and accept the possibility of being condemned to hell forever. The game had received a mature rating ahead of its release due to its detailed descriptions of hell, graphic obscenity, and grotesque plot lines that were created to appeal to horror-loving fans, but it is sufficient to say that it was a huge hit among the niche that it had hoped to target. Fantasmagoria, 1995. Designed by Roberta Williams for MS-DOS and Microsoft Windows, Fantasmagoria was a point-and-click adventure horror game that was released in 1995. It followed a writer named Adrienne Delaney as she moves into a mansion and finds herself at odds with supernatural entities. While she moves into this mansion with her husband Don and pet cat Spaz, she learns that the place was owned by a magician whose 5 wives died under mysterious circumstances. Moreover, she hopes that the place will inspire her to write her next novel, but the mansion seems to be harboring a lot more secrets than she could have ever imagined. Moreover, she starts suffering from nightmares and senses weird things happening around the place, while her husband ends up assaulting her. To make matters worse, she learns all about a demon that needs to be eradicated and soon learns all about the mysteries of the magician's dead wives. The game was released around a time when live-action footage and cinematic scenes in interactive movie games were at an all-time high, and it was a huge hit among horror fans. It was also praised for its violent nature and sexual content, and the horrific touches and suspense-filled plot lines only added to the appeal. Soldier of Fortune 2000. Introduced as a first-person shooter video game, Soldier of Fortune was developed by Raven Software and first published for Microsoft Windows in 2000 before being released for PlayStation 2 and Dreamcast as well. The game was notably famous for its realistic portrayals of violence, including scenes with dismembered human bodies, and players took on the role of a U.S. mercenary named John Mullins, who is tasked with dealing with a terrorist nuclear weapons plot. The game's graphic violence was its main attraction, and players could shoot their victims in 26 zones, ranging from a shot to the head to other messier shots to the stomach, nether regions, limbs, and so on. In fact, players could shoot their enemies' limbs to the point where all that was left was a bloody torso. In fact, the final mission involved a fictional microwave weapon through which players could fry or explode their enemies, and the game was so violent that it came with password-protected options to disable gore and violence. Postal 1997. Developed by Running with Scissors and Ripcord Games, Postal kickstarted the franchise on such a dark note that it was dubbed as a mass murder simulator and banned in over 10 countries. The plot was intentionally vague to ensure that players don't get too distracted from the gameplay, and it follows the Postal dude as he discovers that the town of Paradise has been infected by a mind-altering substance that has induced bloodlust and insanity among the population. While the Postal dude believes that he is the only sane resident, he takes it upon himself to fix things, but he soon ends up experiencing a psychotic episode of his own. In fact, he even tries to murder students and lands in a mental institution by the end of it, when we learn that it was he who was insane all along. The game is a commentary on how modern life stresses can drive people to insanity, and it is an isometric shooter game where players are tasked with killing a certain number of enemies known as hostiles, who range from police officers, SWAT teams, rocket-firing soldiers, and even vigilantes who are trying to throw bombs. The game can also be played on a multiplayer mode, but it is not as popular among fans as compared to the single-player mode. Narc 1988. To wrap up this list, we have Narc, a 1988 run-and-gun arcade video game that was designed by Eugene Jarvis. The game was known as one of the first ultra-violent games of all time and was heavily criticized by parents, while most players praised it for its intense action and gameplay. The objective of the game was to defeat the overarching antagonist, Mr. Big, and arrest and kill drug offenders while confiscating their money and substances. The game focused on 2 main characters, Max Force and Hitman, who receive a memo from the narcotics opposition to find Mr. Big, who heads an underground drug trafficking ring, As the game progresses, Max Force and Hitman shoot, arrest, or even capture junkies or drug dealers, and the gameplay is designed to award them based on how well they confiscate their target's money or drugs without killing them. Marvelous verdict. And with that, we have explored some of the most violent video games of all time, ranging from Manhunt and Chiller to older releases such as Harvester and Fantasmagoria. The fact that most of them were censored or banned in a few countries highlights just how action-packed and violent these games are. And we would love to hear your favorite picks in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.